My name is Haley, and I carry a mistake that feels heavier with each passing year. I married too young. In the innocent haze of youth, I believed that love was the only foundation a life needed. I built my future on promises, on easy smiles and the warmth of a hand holding mine. But the architecture of real life is far more complex, and I was unprepared for its storms. I was only 19 when I said I do to Henry. Now, at 29, regret is a constant companion. I live in a quiet town in Michigan, the kind of place where seasons change more than the people. It's a short drive from Grand Rapids, but it feels a world away. My days are spent in the front office of a local school, a world of paperwork and ringing phones. I offer a smile to every parent and student who walks through the door, but that smile dissolves the moment I get home. In that quiet space, no one ever asks how I truly feel. I first met Henry at a small diner near my office. He was a mechanic at the garage down the road, a man built of solid confidence and loud laughter. He had a strong frame, short brown hair, and a way of making jokes that filled the room. He nicknamed me Sunshine after knowing me for only 2 days. At first, I found him a bit overbearing, but soon I grew to love the way he looked at me, as if I were the only person in the world. He asked me out within a week. 2 months later, he proposed. I remember his words perfectly. "Why wait, Haley? We're happy. Let's just do it." In that moment, his logic felt like a lifeline. My parents' house was a war zone of nightly arguments, a place where sleep never came easy. I thought marriage was my escape, my one shot at a life filled with peace. We were married on a rainy Friday. There was no white dress or grand party. It was just a courthouse, 2 simple rings, and a single photograph to mark the day. I wore a simple blue dress and clutched a single white flower. Henry was in jeans and a clean shirt. "You look perfect," he whispered, and that one sentence convinced me I had made the right choice. Our first home was a small apartment above a pizza shop. The floors creaked with every step, and the walls were so thin I could hear our neighbors' conversations. But I was happy. I filled the space with cheap curtains and small, hopeful candles. I cooked dinner every night, telling myself, "We're building something real." For a little while, we were. Henry was kind in those early days. He'd bring me coffee in the morning and kiss my cheek as I washed the dishes. He filled our tiny apartment with his jokes and called me beautiful. But that kindness had a short season. After only 3 months, a chill began to set in. He started coming home late, the smell of grease and something else I couldn't name clinging to his clothes. The smile he once saved for me vanished. When I asked where he'd been, his answers became cold and short. One evening, I tried to bring the warmth back. I made his favorite meal, chicken and mashed potatoes. I wore a dress he once said he loved. I lit a candle and waited. He walked in, tossed his keys on the counter, and grumbled, "Why is it so dark in here?" I tried to smile. I thought we could have a nice dinner. He glanced at the table. "Looks fine," he mumbled, and then switched on the television, its loud noise shattering the quiet I had created. He didn't ask about my day. He didn't see the candle. His plate sat untouched for 10 long minutes. I ate in silence, the food tasting like ash in my mouth. Later, he fell asleep on the couch. I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at my own cold plate, and asked the empty room, "Is this what love is supposed to feel like?" The weeks that followed were a slow erosion of my spirit. He spoke less and complained more. He called me boring, said I was too soft, that I didn't understand the pressures he was under. I kept trying. I cleaned, I worked, I cooked, I smiled, but nothing I did seemed to register. One sunny Saturday, I suggested a trip to the lake. I missed the feeling of fresh air. "I'm not in the mood, Haley," he snapped. "You always want something." "I just want to spend a day with you," I said, my voice small. He laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Then go alone." His words made me feel invisible. The final blow came a month later. I came home early from work with a slight fever, stopping to buy cookies on the way. I imagined us having tea together, a moment of quiet connection. But when I opened the door, I was met with the sound of a woman's laughter. It wasn't mine. She was sitting on our couch, a woman with vibrant red hair. Henry was right beside her, leaning in close. He looked up, his face a mask of surprise. "You're home," was all he said. The woman stood up quickly, grabbed her purse, and rushed out without a single word. I looked at Henry, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. Who was she? "Just a friend," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Do all your friends sit that close to you? Do they laugh like that?" He shrugged, a gesture of pure indifference. "You're making this a thing." I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. The fight had gone out of me. I simply walked into our bedroom and closed the door. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Henry never apologized. He never explained. He just turned off the light and went to sleep as if nothing had happened. The next morning, I found my voice. "That hurt me, Henry. I feel like I don't matter to you." He finally looked at me, his eyes empty. "Then maybe you shouldn't be here." Those words broke what was left of me. I packed a small bag and went to my friend Madison's house. She wrapped me in a warm blanket and handed me a cup of tea. "You don't deserve this," she said, and I finally let myself cry. I stayed with her for 5 days, waiting for a text, a call, any sign of remorse. Nothing came. I finally went back to the apartment, hoping we could talk, hoping we could fix it. But when I walked in, the living room felt alien. My books were piled in a cardboard box. Our wedding photo was gone from the wall. "What is this?" I asked, my voice trembling. Henry didn't even look up from his phone. "I thought you left." "I needed time," I said. "I wanted to fix this." He finally looked at me. "I'm not trying anymore." A profound silence fell between us, and in that silence I knew it was over. I moved the rest of my things out that night. As I cried in Madison's car, I felt a strange mix of devastation and relief. I had no plan, no home, and no love, but I had myself. And for the first time in years, I could finally hear my own thoughts again. After leaving Henry, I found refuge with Madison. Her apartment was small, but it was a sanctuary. She cleared space in her closet for me and gave me fresh towels. I slept on her sofa for a while, grateful for a place that was quiet and safe. That first week, the tears came unexpectedly. Not loud, dramatic sobs, but silent tears that would fall while I washed the dishes or folded my laundry. I cried in the shower, the sound of the water masking my grief. I wasn't just missing Henry. I was mourning the life I had so desperately wanted to build. My wedding ring still felt heavy on my finger. I would twist it around and around, asking myself if I had failed or if he had simply given up. The answer remained elusive. All I knew was that a fundamental part of me felt shattered. One morning, Madison sat with me, a cup of coffee in her hand. "You don't have to carry this blame," she said softly. "You didn't break this marriage alone." Her words were a small anchor in my storm of confusion. I returned to work, slipping back into the routine of answering phones and filing papers. I smiled at the students, but it felt like I was wearing a mask. The Haley who had existed before was gone. In her place was someone quieter, more cautious. The evenings were the hardest. Madison worked late, and the silence of the apartment was deafening. I started reading again, something I hadn't done in years because Henry had called it boring. I found comfort in the stories of others, losing myself in pages to escape my own reality. Some nights, I'd just watch the city lights from the window, wondering if anyone else out there felt as lonely as I did. "Will I ever be happy again?" I whispered to the glass. One evening, I found an old box filled with letters I had written to my younger self. In them, I found a girl full of dreams. She wanted to travel, to write stories, to one day open a small bookstore with a coffee shop inside. I had forgotten all about that girl when I married Henry. I had poured all my energy into him, and it was never enough. Reading those letters, I cried again, but these tears were different. They weren't for him. They were for the girl I had abandoned, the girl who believed she deserved a beautiful life. The next day, I took off my wedding ring. I placed it gently in a small box and closed the lid. It was time to start over. Weeks turned into a month, and then something unexpected happened. I ran into Henry at the supermarket. I was reaching for a carton of milk when I turned the corner and saw him standing by the bread aisle. He looked a little more tired, but otherwise he was the same. He saw me and froze. "Haley," he said. "Hi," I managed to reply, my voice barely a whisper, though my heart was pounding. He walked over. "You look good." "Thanks," I said. "How are you?" He shrugged. "Same old, still with Madison." I nodded. "I'm still at the school." He looked down at his feet, then back at me. "I've been thinking," he started. "Maybe we gave up too quickly." I studied his face, the same eyes, the same voice that had once held my world. But this time, my heart didn't flutter. It was still. "I didn't give up, Henry," I said, my voice clear and steady. "I stayed until there was nothing left to fight for. You didn't want to try." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I know." We stood in an awkward silence. I didn't feel anger or sadness anymore. I just felt done. "Well," he said finally, "good seeing you." "You too," I replied, and then I turned and walked away without looking back. That night, a new feeling settled over me, peace. He no longer had any power over me. A few weeks later, Madison announced she was moving in with her boyfriend. I knew I couldn't stay. I needed a space that was entirely my own. I found a small studio apartment near the school. It was just one room with a tiny kitchen, but the walls were a blank canvas and the old wooden floors had character. I filled it with a second-hand sofa, a cheap rug, and two small plants I named Lucy and Fern. The first night alone was terrifying. The fear of making another mistake, of being alone forever, crept in. But then I remembered the girl in the letters, the one who wasn't afraid of a blank page. I painted the walls a calming light blue. I bought soft pillows, and I started to write again. At first, they were just small, simple stories, but they made me happy. I felt lighter at work. I laughed more freely. I was slowly coming back to life. An older coworker, Emily, noticed the change. "I heard you went through something difficult," she said one day, handing me a cookie. "You're doing better than you think." Her small kindness meant the world. One afternoon, I saw a flyer at the library for a community writing class. My heart beat a little faster. I took the flyer home. The class was a small group of people, all with their own stories to tell. The teacher, Mr. Dean, had kind eyes behind his glasses. "Don't be afraid to share your story," he told us. "It's yours." That night, I wrote about my wedding day, the rain, the blue dress, the cold pizza we ate afterward. I read it aloud, my voice shaking. When I finished, the room was silent. Then a woman across from me said, "That was beautiful because it felt so real." In that moment, I felt seen. I went to class every week, writing about my past, but also about hope and second chances. It felt like coming home to a part of myself I thought I had lost forever. One evening, as I helped clean up, Mr. Dean said, "You have a gift, Haley." "I just write what I feel," I replied. "That's the best way," he said with a smile. Walking home under a sky full of stars, a story in my bag and a new sense of purpose in my heart, I didn't know what the future held. But for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. 3 months into the writing class, Mr. Dean handed me a note. It said, "Your story made someone cry in a good way. Keep writing." Those words were like fuel. I went home and wrote for hours, losing myself in the flow of words. Looking around my little blue-walled studio at my green plants soaking in the afternoon light, I whispered to myself, "You're okay, Haley." I started a small, anonymous blog to share my pieces. At first, only Madison read it, but then comments from strangers started to appear. "This feels like my life," one person wrote. "Thank you." Their words were a validation I never knew I needed, a quiet confirmation that my voice mattered. One Saturday, I found myself drawn to the local bookstore. A poetry reading was happening in a small corner. A friendly woman invited me to join, and I sat and listened, feeling a sense of belonging among people who loved words as much as I did. The next week, I brought a short piece of my own. My hands trembled as I read it aloud. When I finished, a man sitting across from me said, "That sounded like truth." His name was Daniel. He had kind eyes and a gentle presence. After the reading, he waited for me by the door. "You have a strong voice," he said. "Thank you," I replied, a blush rising on my cheeks. We started talking after each weekly reading about books and coffee and dreams. He was easy to be with. He listened more than he spoke. After a few weeks, he asked if I'd like to get coffee. My heart fluttered with a nervousness that was exciting, not scary. "Yes," I said, "I'd like that." We met at a cafe by the river. We talked for 2 hours, and I told him about my blog. He told me he'd started writing to heal from his own painful breakup. "Writing helps me make sense of things," he said. "Me too," I agreed. Over the next few weeks, we spent more time together, walking by the water, sharing stories of our pasts. I told him about Henry, about marrying too young and losing myself. He didn't press for details. He just listened and said, "Thank you for trusting me with that." He never rushed me, never pushed for more than I was ready to give. He gave me space, and in that space I felt safe to grow. One Sunday, while walking through a quiet neighborhood, I stopped in front of a small, empty storefront. It had a little sign in the window that said, "For rent." "That's the kind of place I used to dream about," I said wistfully. "What kind of place?" Daniel asked. "A bookstore and coffee shop. Small, quiet, full of light." He looked from the building to me. "Dreams don't have an expiration date, Haley. Sometimes they just wait for the right time." His words ignited a spark I thought had long since died. That night, I couldn't sleep. The girl from the letters, the one with big dreams, was still in there. I started saving every dollar I could. Madison cheered me on. "I believe in you," she said, and that was all the encouragement I needed. 6 months later, with shaking hands, I signed a lease for that very storefront. It used to be a bakery, and it still smelled faintly of cinnamon. Daniel helped me paint the walls. Madison helped me curate the first collection of books. Even my mom came by, bringing an old lamp for the front counter. "For light and hope," she said, hugging me tightly. I called it Haley's Pages. We opened on a sunny Tuesday. My first customer was a little girl who bought a book about a dog. I didn't make much money at first, but I didn't care. The shop became a haven for people who wanted to read, to talk, or just to sit in quiet comfort. I wrote in the moments between customers, my heart full. For the first time, I was proud of something I had built with my own 2 hands. Daniel was a constant, gentle presence. He'd bring me flowers or just stop by with a warm smile. He started a story time for kids on Saturday mornings. One evening, as we were locking up, he looked around the cozy shop. "You built this from nothing," he said, his voice full of admiration. I smiled, looking at the shelves filled with stories. "No," I said, "I built it from pain." He met my gaze, his eyes soft. "And you turned it into something beautiful." I didn't know what our future held. Maybe we would fall in love, maybe we wouldn't. But I was no longer afraid. I was not the girl who ran from one house into another, looking for a savior. I was the woman who had walked out of a cold, empty home and built a warm one all by herself.